Hello, and welcome to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast, the show that bridges all things mystical with the chaotic and unpredictable experience of being authentically human. I'm your host, Jessie Herman, life coach, energy healer, artist, mother, and channel for the non-physical entity group Vagrein. In other words, I'm some kind of mystic, and so are you. I am so honored as today, for the first time publicly, our guest, actress Autumn Reeser, shares details about her more spiritual side. We first connected in a channeling session in 2021, and I'm delighted she has chosen this podcast to overcome her trepidation on how her light might be received. From the moment that Autumn saw her first play at 6 years old, she has had a love affair with art, music expression, and exploration of the human character and psyche. Autumn's breakout screen role came as the individualist Taylor Townsend on Fox's hit teen drama, The O.C. This launched her into a steady stream of strong female leads on shows like Entourage, No Ordinary Family, Last Resort, and many more. Over the next decade, she became a mother to 2 boys and found a home telling love stories on the Hallmark Channel, for which she has become a much beloved and in-demand star. In recent years, she stepped further into her power by executive producing for the network, as well as co-writing and directing additional projects for stage and screen. In this episode, she shares how a spiritual awakening can cause upheaval in one's human experience, and ultimately how choosing your difficult is always an option to accelerate your growth and bring you closer to your heart's desires. Please enjoy this wonderful conversation with the amazing Autumn Reeser on Some Kind of Mystic. So welcome, Autumn Reeser, to the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm
Thank
so
you for
excited to have this
coming.
conversation with you.
Yeah, well, we got to know each other some time ago. Do you want to let everyone, I would like to invite you to let everyone to know how we first got in touch.
I think it wasn't a mutual friend of ours was talking to me about you, and then I signed up to do a session with you because I was starting to get really interested in a lot of things, including channeling and what that looks like, and had found Paul Selig, and and I just was curious. I was really curious, and I had a beautiful session with you. I was in Canada. I just remembered when I had that session.
Oh,
That's
wonderful.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're an actress. People know you from your long acting career. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I started acting. I was in Canada for a job actually when we talked, working up in
Yeah.
Canada. Yeah, I started acting when I was 6 or 7. I saw a play. My parents were really good at exposing us to the arts. I'm from Southern California, and so they took me and my sister to like the local community theater there, Carlsbad Community Theater, and I saw a play and there was a child on stage playing like a mouse. I think it was Cinderella, right? And I was like, "Oh, that's what I do. I want to do that." And so it was an immediate knowing and calling, and I don't come from a family that does that. I didn't have stage parents. My mom's very shy, but was very much drawn to that, and it was very, very clear that
Hmm.
that's what I was going to do. And so I grew up in theater in my hometown in Southern California. And then at 17, I applied to one school, to UCLA's theater school, and miraculously got in. We had to do monologues. I'd never done a monologue before. It really, to this day, I'm like, that was a miracle. But I think what they could feel is my clarity and my passion. This is what I was supposed to do. And yeah, so I studied at theater school, and then I started working as an actress professionally around the time I turned 21, and have been doing that ever since, film and TV. And I still work with a theater troupe called the Work Juice Players. And obviously that's changed a lot during COVID. But yeah, I do all of those things, and I've dipped my toe into writing and producing and directing, and just enjoy being a storyteller in whatever way it decides to come through.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love how your calling was so clear, like, or at least, what you were doing, in terms of like your direction, because like calling and what you do for a living are not always exactly the same thing. But you definitely
Yes.
had like a very clear, like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And so more about like your calling, have you, and I think you have, identified like your inner message that you want to be sharing with the world?
That's such a good question. Yeah, and I love that you differentiated between those two things. And I feel there's been multiple parts to it for me. Like I would have said at first it was very it felt like a calling, go do this vocationally in the world.
Right.
And it is so hard to break into the acting industry to claim that. But if there was an egoic piece to it at first, certain, like, as everybody in your 20s, you're still developing your ego. You're still, all of that still growing. And I think around the time I had a child, my first child, I had at 30, there was definitely the beginnings of like dark night of the soul. Hold on, what am I doing? Why do I do this? How does this serve the larger good? What have I done? Is this going anywhere? What am I going to do with my life? Is my child, is this going to take care of my child? Is this important? Is this going to create a world that I want for my children? All of those questions existed for me. And then we'll get into like the path that took me to where I'm at. But I think, what I'm really interested in terms of a calling and how I want to deliver that message in the world, I'm really interested in thresholds and transformation and what happens in that process of moving from one alchemical, like alchemy, moving from one state of being to another. And that tends to be what the work that I create tends to be about. And it's certainly the most interesting thing for me to talk about with other humans. And I'm sure I can be intense for other people who are not interested or who haven't gone through anything like that has forced them to go through a transformation. But I think most of us have, and certainly in these times, which are so insane and unpredictable. And I think we all just went through a collective initiation and
Yeah.
transformation with coronavirus. So it is getting easier to have those type of conversations.
So when you're talking about like transition and alchemy and that moving from one state to another, like, can you explain to us more what you mean by that? Are you like in terms of personal growth, or what does that look like? Is that the dark night of the soul, or is that something else, some sort of other process or transformational element? Because it sounds like you have like a really good framing of it, or a good sort of understanding of what you're referring to. And I think that it's a nuance. It's definitely a nuance. Most people maybe don't even know they're in that transition when they're there.
Right, right. And I certainly didn't when it started to happen to me. I felt, and I'll explain, but I felt like I had done something wrong.
Oh, okay.
Like I had, like, why am I being punished? And I
Mm,
think a lot of people, it's the process of being initiated, and it happens to people through death in their life, right? Or through a car crash or cancer or something that's happening in their life that is maybe not what they would have chosen or expected, and
absolutely.
you get thrown into a situation that forces you to change, forces you to become someone different. And for me, that happened with around the time I turned 33, of having two small children and realizing that the relationship that I was in was not a healthy one.
Okay.
And going through the process of dissolving that and divorce. And there were so many things that happened to me that year. My dog died in my arms, like in front of me. It was like I turned 33, and then it was like initiation, initiation, initiation. And I gave birth to my son alone in my home. And then started, that process of my channel opening and starting to receive more information, which was very, very scary for me because I had repressed that for so long. So
Sure.
then, right, like that's not la, 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 that's not happening. and and then having to contend with that and having to basically look at the reality of my life and go, this doesn't work,
Right.
and I have to make a change. And who I had to become in that process of moving from the state of I'm creating this perfect life and everything's going the way I want it to go, to stepping into the reality, which is this isn't good, it's not healthy, and it needs to change, was like being in the fires, and is a purification process, but very difficult. And so when you go through something like that, or people have gone through many things that are way more difficult, you have to become somebody different to deal with it because you need new tools that you haven't needed before. and now
Sure.
you do. And this is the story of like the hero's journey or any sort of mythological process where you meet with mentors and guides along the way. You meet the right tool, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I have an arrow. And two chapters down the line, that they need the arrow to get into this sacred cave, right? So it was discovering all of that process through living it that got me interested in it and in what we're doing here. and and now I'm so grateful for all of it, and I view the people that were most difficult along the path as my most powerful teachers.
Sure.
Um, but I certainly didn't at the time. So I would say I went into my awakening sort of kicking and screaming. But that was my process, and then I went through another round of it 3 years ago, right before COVID. I had a really profound Kundalini awakening, 3-day Kundalini awakening. Also, didn't know what that was before that
Okay.
happened to me.
Okay.
So it was another like, what's happening to me? What did I done wrong? But I was also in bliss,
Yes.
extreme bliss. So I knew it couldn't be bad. There was no context for me in the world around me. I wasn't surrounded by people with a lot of spiritual knowledge or desire. And so it was another round of figuring out this path. And so the beauty of going through it the way that I've gone through it, which is sort of like trial by fire the whole time, is that now I have gathered along the way necessarily tools and skills so I can help my friends who are also going through this process in a variety of different ways. It doesn't look like my way, and the pace is always different. Everybody's pace is right for them. But I understand, going back to calling on a higher level, why it happened to me the way that it did, so that I could have a deep gnosis and like body understanding of it. And I still, have so much to learn from talking to people like you every single day. But yeah, it's a long answer.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Then it sounds really familiar. I mean, I hear this story over and over again. Like people get the thing that they didn't want, they have the experience that they weren't expecting, and then all of a sudden, like you really do have a choice. You either like choose to fall apart because sometimes you're put in a position where like those are your two options. You either go, oh my gosh, really? There's no way to recuperate from this. Or you do have to become a different person because the person that you are in that moment doesn't, like you said, have the skills or the tools or the abilities. I do believe, however, though, that somewhere underneath everything, the thing that you get is literally the thing that's going to uncover those things that are in you, you know? So it's
100%.
so funny how like everything's always the the perfect catalyst is also the perfect, creation element of the next part of the story. And you as a storyteller, you know that. I mean, you know that like no story's interesting without a villain and no story's interesting without, some sort of big climax or main event.
Something has to happen in your
Well,
story.
yeah, because otherwise,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
nothing's going on. And you're absolutely right about like sort of the collective at the moment. We've all, anyone who's even had like a very calm, mundane, to use a word that is considered negative, but it's not, it's just neutral. Life has recently had like something happen in their story,
Yeah,
and
I know. And
everyone had to do something about this something
it's
happening.
My friends are so cute. I communicate with a lot of people and coach a lot of people through like Marco Polo, and it's been
Mhm.
so cute. Friends being like, "Is the world falling apart?" Like they're seeing these, the awakenings happening on so many levels, and it feels like that. Or they're like, "What's happening?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yep,
The
welcome."
yeah, these things happen. Like this is
Yeah,
this is this is a storyline. This is a script or in Italian, a sceneggiatura. It's a part of now we're going to move the story forwards, right? And I think that's what's happening in the collective. That's also, why this podcast is existing. That's why so many things have come up even in the last couple years, that are pushing on the boundaries of like spirituality becoming mainstream, you know?
yeah.
Even the fact that like, pendulums swing and now there's like a movement that's called woke is like is like hilarious because you weren't even allowed to be awakened, 5-10 years ago. You were like the weirdo in the room, right? So it's really quite funny that now things are sort of coming into a mainstream type of acceptance of things.
Yeah, because I think so too many people are having experiences that can't be explained
That's right.
through, I guess, third dimensional terms, and in to keep it suppressed anymore. It's like too many people are going, but what about this? And what about this? And this is what I'm experiencing personally.
Mhm.
And so it's like you don't have to, there's no convincing. Everyone's having these experiences on their own. They're experiencing synchronicity or whatever it is. And they can't really deny it. I mean, I guess they can. If you really don't want to look at it, you really don't have to. It just gets pretty
The pressure
uncomfortable.
builds up though.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing. You were
Yep.
talking earlier about how, like, you were suppressing, and at a certain point, you are invited. I really think these catalysts are invitations, like, to keep suppressing or to take action. And, you could have stayed in an unhappy relationship, like so many people do. There are
Yeah.
people who kind of wake up one day and go, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble with, this isn't working for me. I'm not happy."
Yeah.
And then they say, "Okay, you know what? But, maybe I can take another route. Maybe I can, like, find an antidepressant that'll solve my problems, or maybe I can, have an affair or whatever." But there are other options other than taking the invitation. And
Yes.
I think a lot of what you see also in sort of deterioration, or what we see in people like suffering so much, is people having that invitation and taking the other options, right? Like, taking
Right.
what they think is easier, but longer run is actually much worse because it suppresses it even further. Like, consciousness isn't going to stop wanting you to wake up. Like, it's just not
Yeah.
going to. So
Right.
things are going to get as bad as you let them get before you
Yes.
take that step towards going, "You know what? Okay, I'm listening, universe. I'm listening, and I'm at your, not like, your will is my will. We're in this together."
Yes. Yeah, and I've heard it said before, when you're at these crossroads, choose your difficult. Like, but if you, to use this as an example, if you choose to stay, it's going to be difficult. If you choose to go, it's going to be difficult. And I have a lot of compassion for people that, because most often we know what we're being told to do. And for me, my signs were very clear, including delivering my son alone. It was very like the messages I was receiving was like, you can do this on your own, go.
Mhm, mhm,
And there was so much synchronicity between that and my dog dying, and the message there being like, this is going to happen to you if you stay.
mhm.
That was the feeling, not,
Okay,
not that that would have happened in the physical realm, but on an energetic level, like
sure.
this is not a good place for you. But I have so much compassion for people who don't take the invitation immediately, because it's terrifying, can be terrifying to do something different
Yeah.
than what you're used to doing. There's that feeling, right, of stepping into the abyss, and it does feel like that. So when I first, I think one of the things that was difficult for me was but I think a lot of people feel this way. It's like, wait, I can see because I'm on the outside, I can see what the best choice is for you. Why don't you just make the choice? Right. And then because you're at that point of your journey, you're like, well, why don't people just make the better choice? Because it's hard.
Yeah,
And
it
so
absolutely is.
I've learned to have compassion and patience and trust in the divine timing of everybody's path.
Absolutely.
Right? And to not think that I have all of the answers to how somebody should resolve a problem, because I don't. That is
No.
for them and their higher power, and um their knowledge and truth.
Yeah, and it is hard to be next to someone, or next to a friend or a loved one who is in a struggle, and you want to help them. And then you have to hold on to that faith that, like, that they are going to have as much complication as they're going to have until they come to that like decision that they want to make that choice or change or whatever it is. And absolutely, compassion is the only
Yeah.
way to go. You can definitely advise. Some people want advice, some people don't, but at the end of the day, they're getting their best advice from inside. Like, it's coming.
Yes.
They hear
Yes.
it. They
That's
just might be
right.
ignoring it. So they're not going to hear it
Yes.
from you if they're not listening to themselves.
That's right. That's so funny. One of my friends just left me a message yesterday with everything she's struggling with, and at the end, she just kept saying, "Well, I just don't know. I just don't know." And so the message I left her back was, "What would it look like if you did know?"
Right.
Right? So often we just, because I've been in this place, like, I don't want to know what I know. I don't want to look
Yes.
at what I look at, because it's going to require me to walk through so much internal
Yeah.
pain that I don't think I'm going to survive.
Right. Or
Right?
even, like, sometimes your own choices are, like, foreign to you. You know, I just had this health experience, and I had to make a decision like what to do about my body and stuff like that. And I knew my truth, right? I knew what I was gonna do. I knew what I was gonna do. I just didn't want to do what I was gonna do.
Aw, oof.
Because, like, I had to then go to everybody and go like, "This is what I'm gonna do." You know? Like, so my truth was, like, very different from somebody else's, but it wasn't even, like, the truth I would have imagined myself having had I not been in that situation. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't know
Yes,
till you know, and then when you
yes.
know, there's nothing else you can know. So it's really a very funny, like, when you get into the habit of listening to yourself, you know the best outcome is always gonna be just following your heart. You know it.
Yep.
And sometimes your heart's going, "We're going over here," and you're like, "Oh, goddamn, I don't wanna go over there.
Yeah.
Why do we have to go over there?" So,
No.
yeah, it's really intense, but, so tell us about, as we're talking about following truth and stuff like that, how is it now that you are not repressing things for yourself internally to be in the world and to be in the public eye with your experiences and with your influence? Because obviously, if you're in a public arena, you have impact on other people. How is that like playing out for you?
To be honest, I'm still in the process of figuring that out. So just
Mm,
to have a conversation like this is so vulnerable for me.
okay.
Um, because, the challenging part about being in the public eye is you have so many opinions. And because I started young, so many opinions from a young age before I was established in myself.
Sure.
And or you post, and everybody, we're all experiencing this piece of it that I'm about to say to some degree. You post something online, everyone has an opinion. Like I can just post something and somebody's like, why's your eyebrow look like that? I liked your hair shorter. That has nothing to like just free for all that the internet can be really hard to navigate because sometimes you're just not in the mood. Like imagine every day you stand up in front of like your classroom, like you're in high school and everyone just tells you what they think about what you're wearing. And I realize this is just part and parcel for it, but as I'm stepping more into my truth and authenticity, like I'm learning to navigate that in a way that feels safe to my nervous system too, because
Right.
I've done
Sure.
so much, I had a significant amount of trauma that I had to go in and heal in my 30s and do all of that somatic work and the EMDR and all of that. And my nervous system's finally getting to a place where I can feel safe in my body again.
Okay.
And so I'm like, I don't want to compromise that sometimes with putting myself out there because I finally feel here, fully here since I would say in the last 3 years are the time where I've done that work. So yeah, this is the start of me coming forward and being who I really am and expressing it more fully. And trying to do it without the fear that I was used to doing it with in my 20s. And certainly there was a culture that when I was coming up in that world of like, that actresses have to be this way and this is the appropriate way to be, and I never felt like I fit into that mold, so I spent a lot of time feeling like I was doing something wrong or like I just wasn't getting it, like everybody else had the key, and I somehow some missed the day where they passed it out, right? um, so yeah, I'm still, thank you for asking that because I'm still navigating it. But what I am finding is it just feels so much better in my body to be where I am truthfully in my imperfection. Because I think that's the message that so many of us need to hear. We live in a culture that tells us that we're broken for being human,
Yeah.
right? Oh, you shouldn't feel like that. Oh, God, you feel like that. Oh, she thinks that. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And so we just I experiencing it like we're putting on all these coats because we got to protect ourselves because who we are is unconditional love. And so
Yeah.
every time we're having an experience that's not that, we got to put on another layer of armor because it feels so bad to the little us inside. And so this process for me has been a process of taking off the armor and the coats one at a time. And so I want to start and am and have been for a while showing up without all the coats and without all the armor because I think that's what is needed right now. I
Yeah.
think that's what we all are learning how to do. So if somebody can watch my process and say, oh, that's what that looks like, and start to feel that in their own body, and it can give them courage to take off a couple of their coats or suits of armor, then that makes me like, I can't imagine anything better to do with my day.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm in total agreement. And I also
Yeah,
think
I
that like
mean, that's
as
what
we
you're here doing right now. I mean, that's what you're, and creating a forum for us
yeah, yeah,
to
it's
do
like,
that together.
the only thing we all have in common really as humans is that we're all so unbelievably unique. Like that is really our commonality. And the fact that over history we've all and it's been useful for our civilization to like homogenize, right, and to be the same, because then a factory runs because everyone's doing the same thing, and like you know soldiers have to all be marching in the same
Yeah.
direction, otherwise it's a mess, right? But now we're coming to a space where we're finally understanding that it's actually the unique aspects of humanity, and not like aspects, I mean like the individuals, like individuations that create the unity. Because without any one being, like like it's not complete. Like we're not all of us if we're not all of us.
Yes.
so
Yeah. That
so
paradox, so
as
beautiful.
yeah, as we all start to embrace ourselves, and I think that's why self-love is such an important thing, you can't start taking off those coats, because you kind of go like, oh, well, ooh, gee, this coat covers up, let's say, I don't know, my physical imperfections. Okay, so I got to keep this one on. And then you kind of go like, well, actually, I kind of like my body how it is. You take off that coat, and you're like, oh, that person doesn't like my body how it is. Oh, that must mean that they don't like their body how it is. But you know what? I'll take
Yeah.
off another coat, because then they can see that if I can like my body, they can like theirs too. So we can all stop
Yeah.
judging each other and like be more chill, and like, I'm
Yes.
sorry you didn't like my hair this length. You like the other length. That's cool. Like it's all right. Hair grows back, or
Yes.
whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
we get that chance to, as we strip down to our true essence, it really does give anyone else who's scared the strength and the courage to look at themselves and kind of go, well, if they can do it, maybe I can, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really what a hero is. It's an example to someone else saying, we can do this. We can do this. You can do this. I can do this. We're good, you know?
We're all doing it together, and it needs all of us to
Oh, it
do it
needs all of us.
together.
Yeah,
Yeah, it needs all of
absolutely.
us. Yeah.
Like this is just one planet, we can't we can't really get off it, we're stuck on it with each other. I don't it's a bit of a mess to be so stuck on the one place with all of each other. So yeah, there's that. And then like, awakening's a funny thing. Like you do get like this mix between spirituality, religion, cultures, and all the stuff that's laid on top of um the concept of spirituality. But in terms of
Yeah.
like, I ask all my guests, does the word like mystic mean to you?
Mm. Gosh. Well, what jumped into my head immediately was Richard Rudd from the Gene Keys. Um, and there's a poetic soul to the mystic. I feel like the way that a mystic is able to express their relationship to the divine, their spirituality can there's a there's an element of the poetic to me when I think of that particular archetype.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just having that element of beauty that's inherent in all forms of spirituality.
Yeah,
That's
I really think it is.
available to all of us, right? That
Absolutely.
particular pathway. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
what
do you
comes
feel
up
yourself
for
to
me.
be a bit mystical?
Yeah, I do, and I have moments where my spirituality is very direct, and um there's no bells and whistles on it, and that's a definite part of my gift with working with people. But then I have moments where it is very poetic, and where the writing that comes through is not from me, it's from definitely in collaboration with a higher source, and I can't access it all the time. So I definitely have days where I'm like, am I sure I wrote that? I'll come back across my writing and be like, I was having a good day that day. Thank you. Um, but yeah, I think that's also part of the fun of awakening, is exploring all of the spiritual archetypes, and as they show up and come through in the different times that they're needed or they want to come through, and again, like I'm still uncovering all this. Like in some ways, my spiritual journey in some ways we're always on a spiritual journey. That's what, right? All of this is. But in some ways, my spiritual journey started at 33. And in some ways it only started 3 years ago because that part of my awakening was so intense and like there was no going back after it. And so my whole life did change since then. And I signed up and went to grad school for depth psychology and archetypes because I didn't even know this was something you could study. I'd been working archetypally for a long time as an actor.
Sure.
That's definitely has always been something that I have used without knowing how to put words to it. And then I found out there was a word for it. So sometimes I feel like I'm playing catch up, but it also feels like it's a deep remembering, like, oh, I know this. Oh, that's what this was that I was receiving. It's this. And then I find it in a book.
Right.
Um, so it's a wild, like I'm in a very interesting part of my journey right now, and just the opportunity to unpack it with you feels so divinely guided as I've learned to be more comfortable using my voice and having the opportunity to talk with you. So
Yeah.
thank you again for the chance to get to know myself better and
Yeah.
to share my journey.
And do you have like spiritual practices that you use now, like on a regular basis?
Yeah, I have a lot, and I'm trying to think how far to go into it, but I meditate every morning and I light a prayer and I light a candle and I say prayers, and that is pretty like I don't really deviate from that and have added it at the end of my day. And a huge part of my process after the awakening was meditating for about an hour every day because I could feel something wanted to open. And that was a profound part of my process because my body would move itself. I
Mhm.
was doing mudras and all of these things were coming through me and nobody else was having this experience. So I didn't really know, and now there's so much writing about all of this and this being a common part of the process. We just don't have it in the collective common culture.
Sure. Yeah.
But it always felt safe and it felt like what was needed, and then it stopped after 6 months, that part of it. Um, so sometimes I'll have days where I'll meditate for an hour on my own, or I'll do a guided meditation. I love to sit in ceremonial work and ritual work, and there's so many practices available. I'll go to church with a friend. To me, God is everywhere, and my connection to the divine can be found everywhere. I've had incredibly spiritual experiences on set while I'm in character because you're an open channel as
Sure.
character, and I've had incredibly spiritual experiences just through doing my art. Um, so to me, it's life is spiritual. Life is my spiritual practice. And even when I'm having, this is what I've been able to not switch to, but invite in more firmly recently. Even when I'm having a challenge in my life, understanding that it's all part of the curriculum and it's all part of, like, oh, okay, yeah, this is teaching me something. And how can I stay in my center in this moment? And how can I approach this as a spiritual teaching as opposed to, I can't believe this person's showing up like this. Like, why do I have to deal with this? Instead, it's like coming back to that place of gratitude. So that's what I would say, like, starting whatever I'm doing from a place of gratitude and acceptance is the easiest spiritual piece that I can offer to anybody because that anchors everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Yeah.
totally is. Yeah, a daily gratitude practice is absolutely fundamental to start out, or especially if someone is in a struggling period, like finding the one thing that's going well can sometimes change your whole day, like
Yeah.
just changing your focus onto that one thing.
Yeah. I'm curious about your spiritual practices. I love to talk to people about this, about their
Yeah. Okay.
work.
So,
Yeah.
I'm not doing like regular meditation that often anymore. I do a lot of channeling recently, a lot of channeling for clients and stuff like that. So every time I go into channeling, it's like a clearing out completely
Yeah.
of myself. And then I get all these downloads of whatever's been spoken about. I don't often know what's been spoken about when I'm channeling with a client. But I do get like the downloads and sort of like residue off of that. And lately My spiritual practice has been actually being human, like being
Yes.
super present and being in the moment that I'm in. And that's like really been a 360 because I think when I first like started awakening, I had this whole phase of like, okay, I have to meditate a lot every day. And I was very much sort of non-duality and that path of like, okay, discipline, discipline to get to enlightenment. And there was like a goal to reach. And then Vagrein started coming in and things changed very much because that like the energy that I channel is super like compassionate and uh like they're just like okay with everything. So like there's nothing that you can do wrong. There's nothing that you have to do or be or there's no goal, right? There's no real goal. There's advice. They will tell you what might, be interesting for you to consider, but they're never going to be like do this or something bad will happen. So in learning that from them, I also learned like a lot of self-love. And my life like changed dramatically since they've started coming in. So I also got separated and I'm no longer with my ex-partner and then I've had yeah, I had breast cancer and I had like all this stuff go on in the past couple of years. And so my practice has really been like when I'm in whatever I'm in, how close to me can I be? Like, that's what I'm present with.
Yes. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So it's like, where's the impulse going? Where's the like almost like I'm the observer of like this being
Yeah.
that's Jesse that's like doing the thing. And how much can I allow this river to flow the way it flows? And how much do I interfere with it? And then how much do I beat myself up for interfering with it? So like, but it became at some point like everything, and I don't know when this shift happens, but almost everything became a comedy at some point.
Wow.
Yeah, like, so stuff comes up and yes, there's all the emotions, of course, like, stuff happens and stuff is bad and you have emotions, your body's gonna process the emotions,
Yeah.
you're gonna feel them, but even the emotions, there was, like, now this observer distance quality to it, and the moment you remember you're the observer and not in it, it's like, "Oh, isn't it sweet that she has such deep feelings and cares so much about that subject, you know? So
Yeah.
that's really my favorite practice right now. And then I'll use like all kinds of tools to support the human, like, I'm doing EFT tapping and I do meditation and I, do like also movement exercises and stuff like that to just get into the body. Also,
Yeah.
sexuality is a huge and amazing tool for spirituality
Yes.
for anyone who hasn't tried that out. And yeah, so that's sort of like me, but nothing's regular at the moment. Like I don't have a regular practice that I would stick to. But then, tomorrow that could change. I could go right
Yeah.
back onto a habit tracker and,
Yes.
be yeah.
Well, it's really interesting. We're in the period of Lent right now when we're
Yes.
recording this Christian Lent, right? And so 3 years ago, so I was raised Christian,
Mhm.
but didn't always follow like a lot of those practices and turned away from it as a teenager because I was like, where's all the women? What the F, right? And then 3 years ago, really started feeling this energy of Jesus again. And not again, because of course this energy is always available.
Mhm.
But I got this download that I was gonna follow Lent. So for the last 3 years, I've been doing Lent and using that period to be really disciplined with myself. And then this year, Lent came up and I expected to do it again. And like by day two, I was like, nope, not this year.
Right.
This is not, I'm not in. So exactly what you're saying, allowing yourself to be in different places at different times on your path and allow really listening to where you are in the present moment. What's actually going to serve me right now? And
Yeah.
so that was a really beautiful lesson too, to not feel like that was a failure,
Yes.
right? And to go, wait, no, this is me honoring where I'm truly at right now. And maybe this summer I'll be in a place where I want to be super, super disciplined because I get very disciplined in those periods because it's been supportive.
Right.
And then this year, it's not.
Exactly. And there's that
Yeah.
curiosity. Like I always say, like, if we can approach ourselves and especially our children, I know you're a mom, so like this is something also that's constantly coming up for me. If we just approach ourselves with curiosity and innocence, and like see like what am I wonder what I'm gonna do today. Instead of like thinking that we know it all, like we know who we are. We have no clue who we are. We don't know how most of ourselves work at all in general. Like we don't
Mhm.
know how our brains work. We don't know how our nervous. We don't have that information. Sure, we can go and study and become doctors, maybe, but even doctors don't know everything, right? So the fact that like today you want an apple and yesterday you wanted an orange is like a mysterious miracle of the universe. Like something is telling you you want an apple and not an orange, right? And having an openness and a curiosity for like those small things can blossom out to like big things as well. And if you're like living your life like that, it's of course it's joyous because it's always a surprise. Like, am I gonna like make that bad decision again? And then it becomes like
Uh,
an exciting adventure to find out like what am I gonna do? I don't know. And then allowing that
yeah.
and then allowing yourself also to, okay, readjust what's serving me and what isn't. And that's sort of like what one of the I think the main themes. I've stopped thinking about myself in general at all based upon like, is this good or bad? And
Yes.
only is this serving or not serving? And is this serving first and foremost me or not serving first and foremost me? Because if it's not serving me, it's not serving anybody. So that's what I've also
Beautiful.
learned recently that like,
That's so
yeah.
beautiful.
So
And I
if
think
like my kids need to go to bed and it's like normally their bedtime, but I'm like, I feel like better for me to have a bath. Well, that's what I'm doing tonight. Like, that's it. And they'll go to bed a half hour later. Like, that's okay.
yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
everybody will survive and it will be fine. And I think that's so beautiful and so important because I think so many of us were raised in households that where that was not allowed for our mothers.
No, that's
You
true.
know, they always had to put themselves second and last, and not even second, last. And it certainly still happens now. It's not that we're past this. I think one of the main thing that I've found with my friends and women in my life is giving ourselves permission to want what we want and to take care of ourselves and to make the right choice that's right for us and to realize that the one serves the all and the all serves the one, but
Yeah.
that I'm here too and I deserve a voice and a choice and I have an opinion here too and I have something that I want here. So many women in this time and the times before us have been programmed with this message that that's selfish,
Yeah. Also
right?
because it is easy to do it for your children, right? So I think that the reason why we see it so often in mothers or in women is because of that cultural like underlining because naturally it comes to us to protect like to want to do that to want to be available, right? And then that gets like augmented. But I think that across the board the whole collective, men, women, children, everybody, we're all going about this the wrong way. Like it's not about being selfish, it's about knowing what the self is telling you and
Yeah,
understanding that that's important information, right? It's not about taking something from someone else. It's about meeting your own needs so that then you're in a space where you can meet everybody else's.
that's exactly right.
And so like that happens also like you see that also with heads of families or even heads of companies, right? Like maybe you have a businessman, right? And he's constantly like worrying about the business and the business and this. And meanwhile, this guy's, not taking care of his body. He's not taking care of his
Right.
relationships. He's not so we're always sort of like putting something else above that. Hey, you know what? I want to go to the beach, right? Because we're
Yeah.
all really kids. And I also noticed this something like, and it never happened to me. I don't know why, but um, I noticed like at some point, like all the people I knew in childhood started talking like adult talk, right? Where they got all these words that I didn't know, like about like mortgages or like just suddenly like conversation went from like, hey, like, is that tree pretty to like, oh yeah, the bottom line is this, and this. I don't understand why we take on that it really almost feels like a suit of like, "Okay, now I'm an adult and now I have to be adulty," you know? And I really think like, how about we try and like take off that and walk around like as adult children, which is what we kind of are. I mean, we are. So that's my
And
advice
more
to
just
anyone listening.
permission to be human.
Permission to be human, permission to like have fun, permission to play,
Yeah.
permission to like really be casual. Like I find there's way too much formality. Uh and just, to have a nice time. And of course, at the same time, like respect each other and have boundaries. Like
Yes.
small order. If you had to go and give advice to a version of yourself that's 29 years old, like where you were when you were 29. Okay. So like none of the awakening
I'm
happened.
return.
Okay. And like this person's sitting there, and maybe like if you can think back to like the emotions you had at the time, or like the inkling you had, like something was not right, right? If someone's sitting there and saying, like, something's not right, and they're listening to this right now, what would you like recommend to them or say to them, or what kind of words of advice would you give them?
Wow, good question. Speak up. That's the first thing I would say to myself. Speak up about all the things that are not working. But it was really, and I'm gonna also say that I would say that with compassion to myself, because that was very hard at the time, and the situation I was in also made it hard.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until, I got into therapy maybe like a year and a half after that, and I like my therapist really had to nail, you're allowed to speak up about what you want, and you're allowed to change your mind. And something that worked for you in your relationship a year ago and doesn't work now, you you're allowed to change your mind, and you're allowed to say, hey, this needs to be different, this isn't working.
Mhm.
Because I think by the time I did speak up, it was so far established in the relationship as the norm that it was very hard to change. And looking back, there were so many things that I would have liked to see be different that I was afraid to speak to. And I wasn't sure if I had the right to feel what I felt, want
Mhm.
what I wanted. Um, and so I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself. And I was afraid if I said, like, oh, hey, I need you to be an equal partner in this way, that I would be seen as selfish. And now I look back and I'm like, that is just a normal, healthy relationship that you're asking for. So yeah, speaking up, and a lot of us need the support in order to do that too. So finding the people in your life who can sit with you as you talk through what you want to say, right? Or a therapist. There's so many. What's so beautiful about this time is there's so much more support available everywhere. There's online help support. There's the holistic psychologist on Instagram. You could just like go to therapy on her Instagram page alone. There's so much support available now. And free support, and people you can call, free hotlines, college therapy. Like there's so many, and not that therapy is the answer, but just having someone to support you as you're making changes in your life. And yeah, that's what I would say to little me.
So basically, what you're saying is you're allowed to want what you want, you're allowed to need what you need, and
And you're
you
allowed to
can say
think
it.
about it.
You can say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's always a request, right? Not it, because if it's not, then it's a demand.
Right.
But right, but like, yeah, and the piece about communication is what I've been working on for the majority of my life. It wasn't something that I was really, I think a lot of us weren't raised with healthy communication, despite, like, I was raised amazing. My household was amazing. I love my parents so much. And like the communication skills, we've really had to go back and get those and work on that. So giving yourself permission to do that, permission to say, I need help. Let me get support.
Yeah.
There's no shame in it, and we all are worthy of it and deserve it.
So, talking about communication, your art form is a form of communication. And
Mhm.
so, can you tell us like what your recent projects have been like? I know you're working with the Hallmark network mostly now,
Yeah.
and love stories.
Yeah. Which is so funny to be someone who's been so wounded in love and then telling love stories. But of course it's perfect, It's the perfect like wounded healer, creating the medicine. Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons why it's been that way. The Hallmark Network has been a really beautiful place, because they've been so supportive of me as a mother, and in because I have the realities of my life, and the way that we do these movies works really well in my life as a mother. But then I create other things on my own as well. And all of that's still in process and growing. And I co-wrote a musical last year, and went and directed that with a group of students. And that was really, really incredible. And that was about a threshold crossing of a coming of age story. I guess it used to be called, but for me, it's like threshold crossings and how those change us and how we're old versions of ourselves and then we're new versions of ourselves. And so I'm always trying to build some aspect of that into the work that I do. But I would say as an actress, my main goal is truth, is to tell the truth of what that character is experiencing in that moment as truthfully and purely as possible. Because what I want is the audience to feel that resonance so that if there's something that I'm going through, that this character is going through, they can go along on that journey. It can be a catharsis or it can be a moment of personal solace for people who are having a difficult time with these love stories. They're medicine in that way. They can be a lot of heart healing for people who are like life's hard right now. And so a place where they can just take a breath for a moment. And yeah, and I don't know where things will go in the future and where I'll be guided, but I do have complete faith that it will be where I'm supposed to be at that time.
So if people want to follow along with your journey, where can they follow you?
I guess I'm mostly only on Instagram right now
Okay.
because I have a complicated relationship with social media at the moment. So it's just, I think I'm at Autumn_Reeser or at Autumn-Reeser. See, I don't even know this.
At Autumn_Reeser. What
Underscore.
you've,
There it
yes,
is.
what you've written here for me. So yeah, that's wonderful. So people can follow you there and find out about these new projects because I'm excited to hear about those too. Would you like to share a little bit more about things that you're working on?
Yeah, I have a couple projects that I've sold to Hallmark recently that are in development over there. So I'll be executive producing those.
Ooh.
And it's really great to have that relationship and have this place that I can take new ideas to and try them out. And I'm working with some amazing writers and it's it's been a really fun creative playground. And I have other things in the works that I'm not like quite ready to talk about yet, but that I hope to and pray to bring forth. Yeah.
Okay, we hope to hear about them really, really soon. And yeah, what else can you leave us with? Anything?
This has been such a pleasure and an honor and an answered prayer to have the opportunity to start to talk about my journey publicly and relate with other people who are on the same path. So thank you, and I've loved following your journey.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been wonderful to have you on. And actually, I've been hoping to hear from you again since last time we met because I knew that even back then you were like a little bit still closeted
Oh, yes. Yep. Yep.
with your spirituality. But
Uh,
everyone's only going to benefit from you when you're comfortable sharing everything, all your wisdom and beauty that you want to share with us. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been so
Thank
wonderful.
you. It's been so beautiful. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Some Kind of Mystic podcast. If you're hearing this message, you've listened all the way to the end of this episode, and for that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's people just like you that keep me motivated to bring you more and more enlightened content to the world. Today's episode was brought to you by the Self-Love Odyssey Toolkit, a comprehensive course consisting of 15 modules that have been created in collaboration with some remarkable guests. This course aims to equip you with the essential tools necessary to develop a profound understanding of self-love, integrated into your being, and transform your life permanently. With this toolkit, you'll learn how to cultivate self-love and empower yourself to create positive change in your life. The complete course is now on sale for a whopping $200 off the original price. So if you want an amazing deal on some of my best teachings, head over to www.jpherman.com/self-love and sign up right now for your discount coupon.
You know what this is reminding me of? In so many actor interviews, they're like, tell us a funny anecdote about something that happened on set. And because of the way I'm experiencing life right now, like I never have an anecdote. I'm the only person. I'm like, I can't tell you. I can tell you what my soul was going through while I was in this project, and I was tell you what lessons I was in, but I don't know any funny stories about what happened on set. So that's the type of pressure that I'm experiencing right now. So maybe that could be the funny story.
Yeah, you might be off the hook.